Thank you. And there is a quorum of commissioners. If you could please restate your question, Mr. Radin.
Yes, it's actually Radin.
Radin.
But that's okay. So I was just wondering, Jim joined us in Les's absence, and just for my own background, is there a formal process for designating a stand-in or a proxy in the event that one of us isn't available to attend? I'm thinking about it, most specifically in my case, if I'm not able to attend at some point in the future, is there a procedure, a protocol for that?
I can answer that. What happened is that Les decided he wasn't going to be able to be on the commission because of his schedule. And so I was appointed by Bruce McPherson, and that was approved by the Board of Supervisors. So he is no longer the commissioner. I'm the commissioner.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you when you came in. You said you were there in Les's place, and I was confused by that.
So Peter, to your question, we don't have provisions at this point for an alternate designation. You would just be absent from that meeting.
Okay. Well, that was my operating assumption, but then again, I was confused about Jim's arrival and the context in which he arrived. So
Absolutely.
It's been answered. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
This is Michael. I have a question as well. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. If you recall, I have eye surgery at 2 o'clock. So if you need to rearrange the agenda for a quorum, you can do so. I'd make that motion, but if not, that's okay too.
Wouldn't we have a quorum with the 4 of us remaining?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm on a phone, so I can't see who's there, who's not there. So that would be a quorum. You're correct.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter if I'm okay.
I think we can officially start the meeting now.
Yes, I was going to start the roll. Just respond present. I'll call you by your last name. Commissioner O'Neill.
Present.
Watkins.
Present.
Reyes.
Present.
Radin.
Present.
And Mosher.
Present.
Thank you. You have a quorum. To staff. For the agenda review item number 2.
Okay. Rita, are you going to do the agenda review?
Yeah, I'll take the agenda review item. So on today's agenda, we have the first item being to consider and approve nomination for chair and vice chair. Approve meeting minutes from our last meeting, June 16th. You will receive an update from the clerk of the board on the status of COVID-19 remote meetings. A presentation from staff on the Redistricting 2011 process. We also have an item to consider and accept update on the work plan for public engagement, which will include a draft list of organizations for outreach, which you've received as part of your agenda packet, and a brief presentation on an informational presentation PowerPoint and script that we've prepared for commissioners. And finally, the last item would be to consider and approve a proposal for public workshop calendar with 2 options, A and B, which were requested by commissioners at our last meeting.
And also commissioners may request postponement or removal of agenda items and/or other non-substantive changes to the agenda.
Thank you, Rita and Susan. Item 3 is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on any items listed on today's agenda or a topic not on today's agenda, provided that the subject matter is within the jurisdiction of the commission. Please note the commission is not able to take action or engage in discussion on any item that is not on today's agenda. Such items may be referred to staff for follow-up or placed on a future agenda. Each speaker will be permitted a maximum of 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes set aside for this period. There are currently no speakers waiting in the queue for public comment, and they have not submitted public comment through the form. Item 4 is the regular agenda. Regular agenda items are intended to provide the opportunity for public discussion of each item listed. Additionally, county staff may make brief announcements, submit written reports, or make presentations that may or may not require commission action. The chair will invite the public to make comment on any item on the regular agenda for a maximum of 2 minutes each. So we'll go to item A, which is the election and consideration of approval nominations for chair and vice chair. Pull this up.
This is Michael. I'll nominate Chris Reyes as chair.
Okay, do that. And Chris, would you like to accept said nomination?
Well, I really appreciate Michael nominating me, but I have to decline. I just finished a year and a half as chair of the Economic Recovery Council, and I sort of promised myself that I was going to have a little moratorium on chair or vice chair for a while. So I'll defer to someone else. And Michael, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome, Chris. Okay.
Great. Before the next nomination, I'd like to give you just a little information on what the roles of the chair are. The role of the chair and the vice chair is to provide leadership to the commission and assist with the planning of commission business. Sorry, let me get my screen share going so you can read along with me. Leadership of the commission, they would be the main contact between staff and the commission. They help plan or provide input on commission activities. At times, this person is the sole contact to prevent any Brown Act violations. The planning of commission meetings, ensuring the commission is remaining on task, working towards a common goal and following the commission's mandated procedures. During the meeting, the chair will call the meeting to order, announce the agenda items. At times, items may be taken out of order at the pleasure of the commission, such as Michael mentioned earlier, so that we do not lose quorum. Items can be moved around if we face that. Another item is request input from other commissioners on items presented, and also consult with county counsel and the clerk to ensure proper legal and parliamentary processes are followed. Other tasks as presented and discussed with staff or the commission in an open setting. So anytime you're working with the commission, it's in an open setting. So to select the chair and vice chair, each commissioner has the opportunity to nominate or support the nomination of a commissioner. The commissioner must accept the nomination for it to move forward. If they do not move forward and there is no nominee, we'd have to come back until we come to a consensus or so and volunteers for that role. If you'd like, I can run through the nomination process, but it seems like you already have it down. So we can just go into the next round of nominations. This will also be shared with the commissioners after, as it has additional tasks for the chair and some script language to prepare for meeting, such as opening the meeting, requesting the call for votes, and just keeping the flow of the meeting. The vice chair has the same duties, but they only act in the absence of the chair. They're usually in a support role only. Okay. Okay, so we can accept the next nomination, if there is one.
This is Michael. I'll volunteer for one of the two if you need someone.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, I'll nominate Michael.
Thank you
as
for the
chair.
chair. Thank you. So we have a nomination from Commissioner Mosher and an acceptance by Commissioner Watkins. We can call a vote on this unless someone would like to second. Actually, since we only have one nominee, we do not need a second unless there is opposition from any commissioners of this nomination. If there are none, I'd like to call the roll call vote for the nomination of Councilmember Watkins as chair. Commissioner Watkins.
Aye.
O'Neill.
Aye.
Radin.
Yes,
Reyes.
Yes.
Mosher.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Watkins has been elected as chair of the commission. And for the vice chair, are there any nominations or volunteers?
I'll volunteer for that. Peter Radin.
Thank you. If there are no other nominees or objections to this, we can go straight to a vote. Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Commissioner O'Neill.
Aye.
Commissioner Watkins.
Aye.
Reyes.
Yes.
Radin.
Yes,
Mosher.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously, and Commissioner Radin will be the vice chair for the commission. So Commissioner Watkins, this is the time that you'll take over the meeting. Since you are calling in remote, I would recommend having Commissioner Radin as the vice chair call the items.
I would recommend that as well. Mr. Radin, would you please take over your duties as chair for the meeting?
Yes, I will. If you let me orient myself. You had, I believe, a outline of where we would go next. Again, just kind of edging into this here. So
Yeah.
we are at the point where we are going to turn our attention to the next item on the agenda. As I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong.
That is
We
correct.
Yes, so what we would like to do is to review and approve the meeting minutes from June 16th, which are available through the packet. Is there a motion to approve those meeting minutes?
So moved.
I second.
Okay, so Mr. Watkins moved and Ms. O'Neill seconded that motion.
Thank you. And now for the roll call vote. Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Watkins,
Yes.
Reyes,
Yes.
Radin,
Yes,
and Mosher.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
and next we will turn our attention to representative from the clerk of the board for status on COVID-19 remote meetings.
Okay, so currently we are able to maintain remote status without posting the location of commissioners until September 30th. After September 30th, if our commissioners choose to remain remote, we do need to post their location. As a note, this location needs to be open and available to the public for the duration of the meeting. So we do recommend using a public workspace or coming into the county meeting space to prevent any posting of personal information. At that point, the commission, I believe, may also decide to stay hybrid, Ruby, if you can correct me if I'm wrong.
We could decide to, all of this commission could decide to stay hybrid, or some of you could decide to come into the board chambers. We could do that too. We could do a mix as well.
Thank you. And we have a question from Commissioner Reyes.
Yes, so I just want to make sure I understand that. So when we say if we're continuing to be remote, we have to share our location. Does that mean we just broadly share it, or we have to share a specific address? Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. Your location would be shared on the agenda and made available to the public within your area to come to attend the meeting at your location. So that's why we do not recommend residences.
What if we're participating out, like I travel to Texas monthly. So if I have to participate remotely from Texas, I'm assuming that's not a problem.
We would have to notice the location as well and let them know that you're out of the jurisdiction. I'm not sure if that would cause any issues with quorum if we have a vote, if they're not within the jurisdiction.
Yeah, I was going to follow up on that. Isn't there a threshold that needs to be met, a minimum threshold of local participation?
Yes, that's right.
So could you just kind of outline that for us?
Sure. So currently we're operating under suspended Brown Act rules, emergency COVID rules. Once that is over, once the governor declares, it sounds like September 30th is our deadline. That's right. We will need a majority of commission members to be within the jurisdiction. And for those of you who are traveling or outside of the jurisdiction, we do have to post notice there. So for example, if you are in Texas or Hawaii, we would post notice of our meeting there at your location in Hawaii or Texas. So just to be aware that the rules will slightly change for teleconferencing.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
just
what
to
is
clarify,
sorry. I was going to ask, what is the lead time that would be necessary in practice and also legally so that we fulfill that transparency?
We would need the address a minimum of 72 hours in advance. We would need it to post with the agenda. So recommended is to provide that within 96 hours of when the agenda is posted.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner Reyes, I may have interrupted you. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. I think I interrupted you as well. So my apologies too. Okay, well, I just full disclosure, I do spend a little bit of time each month in Texas because that's where my son lives. And I know my schedule months in advance, so I can provide staff the dates that I'm gone relative to our meetings, just so in case there's other commissioners who are also out, we could adjust accordingly. But I can provide that probably by September through the remainder of 2021 to help with planning.
Okay. Thank you. And that concludes my report and update on our meeting status. So we are remaining virtual until after September 30th.
Thank you.
I'll ask you, I have one more question on that.
Yes.
Would you define hybrid in your, how would you define hybrid? Does that mean some can go in person, some cannot? We all do Zoom? How do you look at hybrid?
Right, so hybrid is a combination of people on Zoom and in chambers. Generally, it is county council, the clerk, and the commission chair in chambers, and other members are calling in, and staff can call in or have the option of joining us through chambers.
Okay, okay.
But it is true that given the fact that you'd need to publicize the location, that it may be most convenient just to gather in the chambers.
Correct, yes.
If you're within, the local area. Okay. So our next item on the agenda is to hear from the staff on the redistricting 2011 process. Who will be covering that for us?
That will be Matt and Susan.
Myself,
Are you
sorry.
ready? Susan, there you are. Okay.
I am. I'm sorry. I don't know why my picture isn't up. I put lipstick on and everything, but some reason it's not. Matt and I are going to, thank you. Matt and I are going to make a presentation. Matt's going to show the maps there were two plans that were recommended by the advisory group at that time. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and I'm happy to add any detail should you have any questions coming up.
Great. Hey, thanks, Susan. Yeah, what I was going to do is I'll share my screen if that's okay with everyone. Yeah,
please.
Okay. So what you're seeing here is I just kind of summarize the changes onto one map. And maybe to back up in terms of the process, what will happen is we will get a total count from the census. In 2011, that count was 262,382. And we basically just divided that number by 5. And that gave us, that's the total population based on the census. We divided that number by 5, and that gave us the target population. And then we tallied the census blocks, using the census blocks, the counts per census blocks for each district. And that gave us an over and an under. So you can see from this table here that the largest number, the largest magnitude of the over and under occurred in the 4th district. And it was over the target population by 6,477 votes. And so this map kind of shows the changes that actually took place. And the area, so what really kind of where there was an immediate need or a need for action in terms of balancing the population was in the 4th district. And this area here, area 8, this was the area that was transferred from District 4 to District 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of led to District 2 having to do some adjustments with Supervisorial District 1. And one of the other larger areas of adjustment was the adjustment between District 5 and District 1. And you can see, for example, this area here in purple had previously been in 5 and it was transferred to 1. And the intent was to use Highway 17 as kind of the dividing line between the two districts. And I think that was largely due to some convenience when the supervisors would get calls to their office and the constituents would be maybe slightly confused about which district they were in. This just made it simple to say, well, which side of the highway were you on? Help determine what district it is. There were some other minor adjustments that were made in the area of UCSC. And you can pretty much see that the total population that was transferred from any given district was about 15,000 or about 7% of the total population. So the changes were not huge in magnitude. And this table just kind of summarizes, the amounts that were made in each area. So for example, in area 4, which is here, there were 879 people moved from the 3rd district to the 1st district. And so those are the types of adjustments that were made. Are there any questions about that so far? Okay, then in terms of the mapping, some of the tools that will be provided and some of the challenges that we have, and it's not really anything huge, but one of the things that came up last time and we're very likely going to have to deal with it this time is that the census blocks, which are how we're provided the population information, don't exactly align to our parcel base. And the elections department prefers, and I think it's just a good practice, that the supervisorial district lines follow the parcel lines. Now they don't have to, but it makes things a little cleaner in terms of managing the voting precinct layers and the other layers. And so there's kind of these administrative adjustments. And last time what we did is we went through the process of actually aligning the census blocks to the parcel layer. We're not going to be able to do that this time. We just don't have the staff resources. And so what we're proposing is that after the changes are made, there will be an administrative adjustment. So just very slight adjustments that will be made so that the boundaries will follow the parcel line. So you can see in this case here, this red line is the existing, was in 2011, the existing supervisorial district line. And the census blocks don't exactly follow that line. So we had to do kind of an administrative adjustment after. And so some of the maps that will be providing you, and last time again, we provided a set of maps to each one of the commissioners. And so for example, District 4 received a set, and it basically, we just provide maps along the boundary line. And those maps show the existing supervisorial district lines, the census blocks, along with the population counts. And so these will be provided to you to help, you know, get a feeling if you decide, you know, you want to adjust a certain area, what amount of population is within that area. And then last time we also used a desktop software. We provided each one of the commissioners with a license to the software. And this time we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be purchasing some software from Esri. And this is just kind of a preview of what it looks like. It's a web-based tool. And our intent is to make that available to each of the commissioners, the staff in the GIS unit, and then the public will also have access to the same tools that you'll have. And this is a tool that will allow you to run different scenarios, to move census blocks, and see what the counts and how the counts are affected based on your different plans that you may come up with and that are submitted. So that was really kind of what I had to share.
Thank you, Matt. I wanted to just, so I think the most important things to remember about what happened in 2011 was that the advisory group at the time wanted to submit 2 plans to the board for their consideration. So if you get into a position where you're almost there, but not quite, you can certainly do that as well. You don't, eventually there was consensus agreement on plan 1. And the only difference between this first and second plan was a minor boundary adjustment at UCSC. During the process, the city of Scotts Valley made a proposal. A private citizen in the Watsonville area made a proposal. And the Capitola City Council made a proposal about adjustments that they had a preference for. And they were all considered, but the original plan 1 was what the board approved. This is all available to you on the county's website. If you type in Santa Cruz County Redistricting 2011 and go to Board of Supervisors reports, if you choose the agenda from September 20th, 2011, all of the maps are included in that, and comments and reports and letters that had been submitted to the board. So there's a complete digest of everything in that particular report. Has it all.
Okay. May I ask a question just as in background? I am impressed, Matt and Susan, with your knowledge about what happened 10 years ago. Were you both directly involved, or are you picking this up from your predecessors? You were both on the scene in 2011?
I certainly was.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's correct. I
And
was,
Matt was also.
yeah, basically in the same role that I'm in now.
Oh, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I wondered, have the census block boundaries changed in the last 10 years, or are they the same?
They actually have changed. One of the challenges that we dealt with in 2010, 2011 was the census provided us with almost 1,400 census blocks that had no population associated with them. And that the way the census blocks were drawn, and so the blocks there, it's kind of a nested system. So a block is the smallest unit, or the tabulation block is the smallest unit. Then there's block groups, which is like a collection of the blocks. And then there's tracts, which is the largest, one of the larger subdivisions in the county. So there was the way that they used to draw the blocks were visual things that the people that were out canvassing could see. And then as GIS has evolved, we've tried to rely more on maybe other existing lines, streets, maybe rivers to a certain degree. So in 2011, it was challenging. We had a lot of these blocks that really didn't make any difference where you moved them, because they had no population associated with them. So we worked in 2016 with the census, and they have a number of different programs that allow local jurisdictions to make suggestions on how the blocks should be aligned. And part of the work that we did was we submitted some recommendations on kind of merging those shapes, getting rid of those blocks that had no area and combining them with the adjacent blocks. And then also working on some just general configuration issues. So there is a change. They did make some improvements. The total tabulation block count has been reduced. Hopefully it makes it a little easier for us. Again, we still face that challenge in some of the rural areas where our parcel layer, our parcel line layer doesn't match the block layer. But other than that, I think the data that we're getting in terms of the geometry is much better than 2011.
Thank you.
This is Michael. I have a question. So what's the process for changes or alterations in a census year? What does that process look like?
Well, we won't be making any changes or requesting any changes to the block configuration at this point. So they're going to be providing us the census geography, and it's going to be, as I said, the tabulation blocks, which are the smallest units. And then there'll be block groups and tracts provided as well. We're going to be mostly focusing on the tabulation blocks, the smallest unit. So that's, yeah, it's kind of like what we're handed. And that's what I was saying about the administrative adjustments that might take place after, at the commission's direction, or with your understanding and blessing that, we don't necessarily have to follow the census blocks exactly. If there's a couple cases that you can see where it's mostly in the more rural areas, there's pretty much nobody living in that area. And the numbers are very small in some of those areas. In the more urban areas, because they do use the street center lines, the parcel lines aren't an issue. It's mostly out a little bit further in the rural areas where where the issues are.
So I guess my question was really about administrative adjustments over the next decade. That's my question.
Yeah.
Right. So does this commission stay in, for 10 years, or who oversees that process?
Those lines don't change. So once the lines are established, those are the lines that are set for the next 10 years. So the lines that we're working on this year, or this redistricting process, were the ones that were established last year. And what does happen over time is there are some slight adjustments to the parcel boundaries. And so there's things like lot line adjustments, mergers, combinations, maybe some adjustments due to some errors. After the fires, we found some areas that were just off. And so the parcels can kind of move underneath it, but we don't necessarily make adjustments significantly to the supervisorial district boundaries.
But actually, isn't it true that you don't make any adjustments to the supervisorial boundaries? In other words, whatever is adopted as a product of this exercise will be in effect until the election of 2032.
That's correct. That's correct. If there are two parcels that were, say, on either side of the line and they were merged, we would not redraw that. We would not adjust the supervisorial district boundary between those two parcels.
And I think just as a little tiny correction, we won't, it just happens every 10 years after the census. So the next commission will be doing this in 2031.
Okay. Susan and Matt, are there other items that you'd like to discuss under this line item here?
No, thank you.
Okay. And are there any questions from the commissioners of either Susan or Matt? Okay.
For the record, there are no speakers to this item.
Thank you. Thank you for making that clear. So then we can move to our next item, which is to consider and accept an update on the work plan for public engagement. And who would like to handle that from the staff?
Thank you, Radin. I'm going to be speaking to the second piece of this, the informational presentation, PowerPoint and script. But the first piece of this update is the list that was provided to you of organizations for outreach on redistricting and providing information. Susan Perlman put that together. Susan, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the list.
It's a fairly extensive list of organizations in Santa Cruz County that are active in various areas, the civic and political life, education, community organizations, labor organizations. I do not pretend that it is complete. We also have the capacity to address all of the Santa Cruz neighbor and next door Santa Cruz County folks. So we'll be going through that, and I didn't list all of the neighborhoods in those. And I encourage you to take a look at it. And if there are ones that you think are important to add, I'm happy to do so. Just send me an email and I'm happy to add them to the list.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it the case, though, that the list really doesn't have any sort of legal effect, really? It's there as a guidebook to people that we can reach out to, organizations that we can reach out to. So this is a living document. We're not going to be adopting it. It's not going to be etched in stone. It's
Correct.
Something that will evolve. And
it's a starting place.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Any other commentary on the subcategory A?
I would just want to add, Commissioner Radin, our intention is to utilize this list and any names that you all add to, or names of organizations you add to, as sort of where we send some of the written materials around this, that they then can distribute to their members to encourage their participation in our actual workshops that we'll be talking about in the next item. So this is, we want to try and get the word out there about the process, about how to engage, and then sort of prime the pump for that, the sort of on the ground map drawing community of interest part that comes a little bit later. And Susan, please correct me if I'm misstating that, but that's kind of, we want to get word out, and we think probably having a smart infographic that can be distributed in paper and digitally just through this network is probably our most cost-effective approach to encouraging participation. And just for the record, Elisa Benson, staff to the commission.
Thank you, Elisa.
Absolutely right, Elisa.
And Commissioner Van, I just wanted to answer your question about the legal requirement. We do have one, and it's election code 21508. And it says the board shall take steps to encourage residents, including those from unrepresented and non-English speaking communities, to participate in the redistricting process. And that is accomplished by providing information to civil rights groups, civic engagement groups, community groups, or any other group that's active in the community, especially those in language minority communities. So this is how Susan has satisfied our legal requirement by putting together this list.
But see, that I had a particular nuance in mind, and that is that there is nothing sacrosanct about the list that is here. It can be modified or supplemented. In other words, as long as we observe those standards that you just articulated, then we have the ability to build on that without really any sort of impediment.
That's right.
Okay.
This is Michael. I noticed Monterey had an extensive PR campaign around redistricting. Is that in the works for Santa Cruz County at all? When I say that, they had a lot of ads on television, radio, those types of things.
If I'm not mistaken, much of that was directed toward recruiting people to serve on the counterpart to this commission in Monterey County. And
I don't think so. But that's okay. I mean, yeah. But there's no other PR campaign beyond what we're talking about right now. I guess is my question.
That isn't correct. There will be a multifaceted outreach. Probably most of the energy will be put into social media, but certainly we're going to be looking at the efficacy of doing print and television when we get into the public workshop and public hearing phase.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
And do we have a budget that is allocable to those kinds of outreach efforts?
We do. We're working with Jason Hoppin, our communications manager, on the most efficient use of those funds. So absolutely, that's one of our tasks in the next 3-ish weeks. So we do have a small budget for that.
Okay, thank you. So anything else on item A under 4E at this point?
Yes, would the staff and the commission prefer us adding to the list just through email and not discussing it here? That's what I'm assuming. Okay.
Okay, and so with that.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Marshall, you're welcome to discuss it here. We're all here, or you can email individually to the staff.
I was just going to mention that the Santa Cruz County Library System is a great way to get information out. And especially up here in the Valley, the library is one of the few public places that people go. So I would just make sure that we coordinated with the library system.
Excellent suggestion. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. And so with that, shall we move then to Susan and the redistricting informational presentation? Or actually, no,
It's Rita.
It's Rita.
Yeah,
Rita,
I'll take this
Rita, you were
one.
going to do that. I'm sorry. That's
No
right.
worries.
You did volunteer to do that, and so thank you.
Yeah, I'll take this one. So like many staff members said, we're really trying to put all of these tools together to do our due diligence in public outreach and provide you all with as many tools to kind of go out there and do any type of public outreach that you want to do using the list that was provided. But one thing that we put together is let me share my screen. There we go. Is a informational PowerPoint. So the goal of this informational PowerPoint, which will be distributed to everyone after the meeting along with a script, is to give you something kind of pre-made if you choose to go out to different organizations and provide redistricting information and give everyone a little bit of information about what you're doing as far as our redistricting efforts. So I want to go through the PowerPoint just briefly so you can see what's in there, because I also want to leave time for our next item, which is kind of goes hand in hand with this PowerPoint as well, but it's the next item on the public workshop calendar. So I'll just go through the slides, and if you have any questions, please stop me and let me know. Let's see, are you seeing the main page? Is that the case? Can I get a thumbs
We're
up?
seeing something that has the heading informational session.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So this next slide in the PowerPoint is just a reminder to the public that this is an informational session, and public input should be taken at regularly scheduled commission meetings or can be given at the website. And staff Elisa or Ruby, please, or Susan, please stop me if I say something that's incorrect, or if you want to add anything to this. Okay, this next slide is just an introductory slide where you will be given an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself, talk a little bit about yourself as a commissioner, but also talk about the Advisory Redistricting Commission as a whole, your purpose and your role as commission members. In this next slide, you'll be able to talk about what redistricting is and why it matters to folks. Talking about the redrawing of district boundaries, population equality, electing representatives, and making sure that the public knows that they do have a voice and a say in the redistricting process. You can talk as much or as little to any of these items. You know, you can go above and beyond what's on the script that will be provided. In this next slide, we felt it was a good idea to kind of let people know that there are other redistricting efforts taking place that also affect them at the state level, and all the way down to community college districts will also be participating in redistricting efforts. So just to give people a little bit of info that there's other things that are happening around redistricting, and maybe spark curiosity to do a little bit of research work on their own and see if there's any other places that they'd like to be involved. This next slide lets the public know the different criteria that you as commissioners will be looking at when you get into the line drawing and mapping phase. Just as a reminder, we'll be giving you at a separate meeting a kind of refresher on these different criterias and other things as we get closer to that mapping phase. And we're getting close to the end of the informational PowerPoint. We wanted to keep it short. If you do decide to use this when you go out to do outreach efforts, or we as staff can also take this PowerPoint and go out and do outreach efforts at your request. But one of the slides that we feel are really important is this slide on communities of interest. At the previous meeting, we gave you, we talked a little bit about communities of interest and gave you a definition as well. But in this slide, we kind of also go through what the definition is of a community of interest, how people can go about defining their communities of interest, and how they can participate by mapping their communities of interest and giving us some information on their communities of interest through our website. And in the script that we provide, we'll be giving you examples of communities of interest and talking points to this and other slides. Finally, the last informational slide on this PowerPoint is this timeline phases slide. It breaks down the work that you're doing as a commission into different phases. We're currently, as you can see, July through August, we're in the access outreach phase. So we've got our website up. We're starting to talk about outreach efforts and going out to different organizations or providing, I'm blanking on the name, infographics, providing infographics and providing you all this informational PowerPoint. And then quickly, September's around the corner, and we'll be going into more of an involvement and engagement phase where we start to talk about public workshops and getting communities of interest input. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next agenda item. Come October, you'll be going into the line drawing and mapping phase of redistricting with public hearings and map adoption towards the end of the year. So just a quick little timeline just for folks to see kind of what you're doing and what they can expect and where and when they can get involved. And that's it. This is the last slide, just encouraging folks to get involved. I went through this really quickly. My apologies. This will be provided to you along with the script, like I said. But it's just another tool. It's just another tool to put in your tool belt and for all of us to kind of get people participating in redistricting.
Well, thanks very much, Rita. Do the commissioners have any questions of Rita?
I have a question of, do you guys have any feedback for us or changes you would like us to make or expand on? Or is this good enough and we can take it out, try it on, and then adapt based on your experience?
I don't have anything particular to offer in the way of changes. It looks like it's been very well thought out
Yeah.
and workable.
Yeah, I thought it looked good too.
Okay.
I have some questions about the timing of the public outreach, but I think that will come up in the next agenda item. That might, depending on how that discussion goes, it might result in some modification to the PowerPoint, but I'll wait till the next agenda item.
Okay.
And excuse me, Chair, just for the record, would like to note that Commissioner Watkins has dropped off the call.
Thank you. So let's move then to item F. Let's shift gears there and look at the public workshop calendar that is contemplated.
Okay, let me get that up and share it real quick.
Before Rita shares, I just want to, mostly for Commissioner Mosher's, starting off with us, this reflects the request of the commission for us to look at an outreach workshop plan that either consisted of 3 workshops or 5 workshops. So we've sort of done that and sort of given our best recommendation. So that's why you have an alternative here. And maybe, Rita, are you ready?
Ready. Let me know if this is too small. I can definitely blow it up.
Well, it might be slightly better if you can expand it.
Okay. Okay, so at our last, so like Elisa said, at our last meeting, we provided a calendar for redistricting meetings, and we also provided some options for public workshops. And just as a little bit of background for Commissioner Mosher, the public workshops is another effort for us to comply with our requirement of public outreach, right? We want to put these out there, get as much input as possible, and then they serve as a resource for commissioners when they start drawing maps. And at our last meeting, commissioners requested to see 2 options for public workshops. Option A, an option with 3 public workshop meetings throughout the county, and then an option with 5 public workshop meetings, 1 at each district. So I will scroll up. And I put this calendar together just to show you the different phases. It aligns with the PowerPoint, and it just shows the different phases of the redistricting process and our outreach. Like I said, we're currently in access and outreach. So we're distributing the infographics, social media posts, things like that. But then, and one of the things that we are planning and are recommending for a public workshop is a public educational workshop, August 18th. As we started to think about the different dates for the public workshops and when they would land, we felt like a general public education workshop at a centralized location or virtual or hybrid would be really good just to set the stage for the public, to give them information on a redistricting process, remind them again on how they can participate, that they can go online and draw their communities of interest, submit communities of interest forms, and just make it more informational before we go into the more focused public workshops. So this August 18th date is, it's kind of it's a public workshop, but it's kind of above what you requested, just because we're recommending something a little bit more general. And then we go into options A and options B. As we started to think about the dates, we really took into consideration when data would be released. We wanted to give you enough time to really take in and digest all of the public input that you'd be getting from the public workshops, and then also give you enough time to draw lines and draft maps once we get the data and serve the waiting period.
Okay.
Yeah, and the locations would be determined based on commissioner input, depending on what option you decide to go with. One thing I do want to note is down here at the bottom, we did add kind of a little note that once mapping begins, there might be a need to have additional ARC-21 meetings. That doesn't have to be decided on. It's just kind of a note that's there. And we can touch on that at future meetings.
Okay.
Any questions so far? This was
So-
part of the package, so we had a chance to look at it. So yeah,
Yeah, so with regard to the different elements of this, it seems that the one that is most ripe for today is to decide between option A and option B.
yes.
I'm a little bit hesitant to commit to dates at this point, commit on behalf of our commission to dates without having a chance for everyone to look at their respective calendars and, to see, what might fit and what might be off the table for them personally. So should we begin with the option A, option B question?
I have some background questions.
Oh, please.
That would be okay. This is Commissioner Mosier. I'm just confused in terms of the data in the line drawing and mapping work section. The legacy data, when are we going, what is the data we're going to get in August, and what will that inform us about? Will it tell us, for example, how much more population gain there's been in the county generally? Will it give us any sense of what the magnitude of our job's going to be, in the sense of, one district has gained a lot of population and others have lost? Or is that not going to happen until September 30th? What will when we go to these public workshops, I would imagine one of the first questions is going to be, well, how is it going to affect me? How is it going to affect my district? Are we going to lose a bunch of people out of our district, or an area? Or are we going to gain? And I'm just wondering, will we be able to answer those questions at all at these public workshops, or are we going to have to be saying to people, well, we don't know yet, we're just getting general comments from you about where, communities of interest or whatever. It seems kind of abstract to me until we have the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good question, a really good point. And I will leave it to Susan and Matt, just because data and the dates are not as solid in my mind yet. Matt or Susan, if you'd like to take the question.
Okay, I'll start, and then Matt, please check me here. Because the deadlines were so skewed for everyone, the Census Bureau decided that they would release the legacy format data, which is not usable for many people, for many communities, counties, states that don't have a sophisticated database to handle the formatting. So they're going to release it to the states on August 16th. And it will go to, in California, to the statewide database, which is our state's database management for census. At that time, they're going to retool it, they're going to convert it so that it looks like the actual public law data that we're all used to looking at. And they anticipate that that process would take 2 weeks. After that, they're also required to take that data and apportion all of the people who live in, who are currently incarcerated in state prison, and apportion them back to their home, last known home address. And they, early in the process, suggested that would take an additional 3 or 4 weeks. So I feel quite certain that we will have formatted data, but it will not be apportioned at that point. And then the question is, well, how many Santa Cruz County residents are currently incarcerated in state prison? Are we talking about a big number, a little number? And I know Ruby is working with a consultant to find out how other counties are participating with the formatted but unapportioned data, whether they're going to start making plans. And I would assume that it would be okay to start making plans, but in terms of actually developing the map, the safest thing to do is wait for the, and probably the legal thing to do is to wait for the now formatted and apportioned data, which come to you, you know, all willing in September, and before the release of the whole idea is to try to shorten the time or give you more time, so to speak, by using the legacy format data. We do have the capacity to use that, both MAT and the statewide database.
So I just want to make sure we're answering the question, which is, we think that by the end of August, we will be able to know the number, right? How we have to, just what our total population is and how we have to distribute it across our 5 districts and what the ins and outs are. We think that the marginal change from the apportionment probably will not significantly change that that premise that we get at the end of August. So to your point, Commissioner Mosher, that we would be able to provide that information around what's the state of the universe in terms of numbers as we go into those workshops in September. In terms of the focus of those workshops, our initial planning has been that would be really more around communities of interest, as well as like, this is, you know, what the lines look like and currently and how they might change. But to inform your work at designing new maps, the big thing is for you to understand your communities of interest. So the data will work. It won't, as Susan's pointed out, it won't be our final data that we have to double check against, but you'll have a sense of where we saw growth in population and where we'll have to shift. Am I describing that accurately, Susan?
Absolutely.
So we're going to have to true it up as we get the final, but we think just given what we know about our population, we're not going to face a really big swing when the apportionment results come forward.
And I also wanted to add about the public workshops is that you don't all have to be there. The election codes provides for staff to conduct those workshops. So it's okay if you can't meet all, either option A or option B, all those meeting requirements. That's why we have separate times for the commission meetings to get together as the commission. Once we get into the map drawing later in October, then we will need your presence at those meetings. But just didn't want to scare people away with all of those proposed dates.
Just why I think this is important in terms of at least my involvement with the public, getting people involved in the public workshops. Since I was asked to be on the commission, I've had a number of informal conversations, and I can tell you that for most people that I know up here in Scotts Valley and San Lorenzo Valley, it's like this is way down the list of importance because they figure I'm going to be in the 5th district anyway. And that's not going to change. So great, Jim, go do what you're up to doing. And I have 5 other things that are higher in priority. It would seem to me that we'd get more public interest if we were able to say, well, we're going to have to make some shifts. And so those community of interest that are at close to boundaries, I think you really want to get involved here because we want to hear from you. That's going to be a subset, I think, at least in where I live, it's going to be a subset, and we could target those communities of interest that could be affected by this map drawing. You know, there's a community, you know, there's several communities of interest in the 5th district up where I live. We're going to stay in the 5th district. I mean, Felton's going to stay in the district, and I know that. So, but there are folks, particularly in Scotts Valley, maybe down in Santa Cruz, where this is, you know, so I would think we'd want to target those communities of interest that are, who will have a practical role potentially in the map drawing, rather than kind of a general, this is what this is about, which I'd be interested in knowing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm wondering 10 years ago how this went and how much public involvement you got.
Well, to just speak to 10 years ago, that's the only thing I can state with any certainty, is that the law was completely different. There was no requirement for the kind of outreach that is required with the bills that were passed in 2019. I think it was 2019 and 2020. Ruby, correct me if I'm wrong. And it established a very robust requirement for counties to conduct, to be legal. So we are required to do an expansive outreach program. And Jim, I totally understand what you're talking about. The people that got involved last time were the people on the boundaries. So, you know, I really get that there's a real difference between realistically engaging people in this and yet still required to make the effort. For example, I met with I was at a social gathering and I ran into Carol Fuller, who's head of the Democratic Women's Club. And I was so excited to tell her about redistricting. And she was like, oh, no. What's going to be of interest to me is what the city's going to be doing in their redistricting. I'm not so interested in what the county does. Maybe we'll get into it, you know, when you get to your last part. So if that was any indication, I just want to acknowledge what you're saying, but also understand that we've got this mandate.
I didn't realize that, and I appreciate that a lot. And so the extent to which I see we have to do this, and I support it completely. It just maybe as we do our outreach, we may want to try to really identify communities of interest that are on the boundaries, so that they're aware we're doing this, so that it becomes it becomes the most useful exercise that it can be. Thank you.
Excuse me, Vice Chair. It appears Commissioner Reyes has a question.
Yes, Commissioner Reyes, please.
Hi, there was a mention there about our attendance at these public hearings. What if we can't attend? Is it just nice to have us there if possible, but what if we can't attend? Will these public hearings be, or these community outreach events be publicly posted meetings of the commission, or will they just be general get-togethers? Can you share a little more on that?
Well, shall I turn to Ruby on that
Sure.
question? Okay.
So we have public workshops, which are really listening sessions where we're listening to, or actually all of you, the commission is listening to the commission, to the communities and listening to the public and what they want you to know is their definitions of their communities of interest. So that's the first section that Rita's talking about is the option A, and option B, the involvement and engagement, which is the public workshops. So Commissioner Reyes, it's okay if you can't make some of those, or we will notice them. We will comply with all the requirements for people to know about the meetings that to come. And then once we get the data and we're able to start really discussion of, you know, who has more population than other districts and where we need to kind of move the lines, then we do move into what are called public hearings. So at the public hearings, we definitely hope that you will be able to attend so that we have a quorum. So slightly different legal requirements for each of the two. And once we get into the map drawing, then we definitely want you to be involved as a representative of your supervisor, so that your supervisorial district has input.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So with that, shall we attempt to discuss the specifics of the items that were flagged on the presentation, beginning possibly with the option A, option B choice? Would anyone like to comment on that?
Well, given this discussion, I'm not sure we need 5. So it sounds to me like perhaps option A would be the best, so that we don't task staff to more meetings when we're not expecting a large public involvement at this stage.
You know, I tend to agree with you. I think I might have been responsible for the general outline of option A landing on this meeting's agenda. My thought is that you put, you know, more muscle behind fewer events, and you attract, you know, more people to a single event, as opposed to diluting both the staff resources and then the attention of the public. And the other thing that I think is important to consider is, if you're going to do the 3-site option, then, you know, you can tell people, look, we're going to have one in the North County, one in the Mid County, one in the South County. And if you artificially lead to 5 meetings in the supervisorial districts, you don't really get to the heart of the matter. For example, you know, 3 of these districts touch Santa Cruz, 2 of the districts currently touch Watsonville. And if you tell me that we have to have a meeting in the 2nd district, well, it's a big deal as to whether or not that meeting is going to be in Freedom or whether that meeting is going to be in Capitola. And so I don't think we really solve anything by artificially saying, let's have 5 meetings, 1 per supervisorial district. Instead, I think we go for the qualitative. Let's have people with an option to go to the nearest convenient site to them. And perhaps that actually underscores some of the points that we've been making, which is that maybe you should identify more with your community of interest than you do with what supervisorial district you happen to be standing in at the moment. So I personally would lean toward option A for a number of those reasons.
These will be in-person meetings and not Zoom, or will they be hybrid, or have we decided that?
Well, my assumption is that they will be in-person meetings.
I think we would actually recommend they be hybrid. So,
I see.
Because we actually would like to be able to, we found having a hybrid option for participation from the public, that they don't have, they can come on this kind of venue and not necessarily pack up those kids, come in the car to a place and try and marshal their participation. It would probably be, we might attract more people if we have a hybrid. So yes, public can come in person, or they can participate this way. That would be our recommendation, is we do a hybrid approach to the workshops, just to maximize the ability for the public to be engaged.
And actually, to a degree, that would actually address the possibility that a number of the commissioners might not be able to appear in person at every one of the meetings, but they could take time to tie in through a virtual connection if they happen to be traveling or something like that. But in any case, there will be an in-person element to each of these workshops, correct?
We would technically we wouldn't have to. We could do them all virtual. We wouldn't recommend that. We think we need, we think we want to provide, assuming the commission supports that. I mean, if we do them before September 30th, you could be all virtual. But we the Board of Supervisors is moving to back to a hybrid model starting August. And we just think having more venue for people to participate is the best. And that would be our recommendation to you all, that we run these as a hybrid approach.
Yeah, I support that. I think the fact that it is going to be hybrid points again more to option A, because it gives people, everyone across the county, 3 separate options, dates to participate in this informational. This is not going to be a discussion, debate sort of thing. This is to gather information. That it gives people multiple dates to attend. And I agree with Commissioner Radden that doing it by supervisory district is kind of artificial at this point. Really what we want to do is get people to understand the process and how they can get engaged in it. So I would support option A and the hybrid.
Commissioner O'Neill, I believe you are interested in speaking.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but so in October, that's when we'll have the hearings. And do we have a set number of hearings that we need to do? Because that kind of comes into play here.
The law requires us to do 4 hearings, and we can pick any. Well, so we will pick of these workshops 1 to satisfy the before maps requirement, and then after the data is released, we will have 3 more hearings that we have to do.
Thank you.
And Ruby, correct me if I'm wrong, but these hearings are staffed by our Board of Supervisors.
I'm sorry, can you clarify, Rita? What do you mean by staff by the board?
Well, the hearings are for the Board of Supervisors to consider recommended maps from the Art Commission. So it isn't that
they're not, yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah. So
yeah.
Susan was going to jump in. I may have lost my train of thought there. Go ahead, Susan.
So just, Sherry, I'll jump in. So what we're starting to think about, as we were planning this meeting, we were wondering whether we wanted to go here. The earliest public hearing where it would be you all presenting to the board what you would recommend them consider. The earliest one we've talked about would be October 19th. So, you would have up until October 19th to develop the proposals of this commission to the board. And that would be the first bite of the apple. And we want to sort of work on this a little bit and bring it to you in August. That would be the first bite. Second bite, November 9th, and then final adoption, November 16th. So this is we are trying to compress, because before we were gonna, because of the data receipt date, we thought we were going to have to run all the way into December. Ideally, we would like to give you guys a shorter time frame so we can be done, and we're not running into that late date in December, because then of course this then goes to the Clerk of Elections and informs a whole nother process that they go through. So I don't know if that's helpful, but we kind of want to front load this so we can get through the work quicker, and you guys aren't on the last board meeting of the calendar year on December 7th, if we can pull it off. If you find something along the way where you need more time, you'll have that option, but this would be sort of how we just pack the work and just plow through and get pace and go with it.
But just to clarify, we won't be starting to draw the lines until September 30th. And we're going to want to be done with and make a proposal to the Board of Supervisors in 2.5 weeks.
Our working idea is you would have collected all your public input,
Yeah.
informing you all and whatever you need to do through September. You'll have the data. You'll be thinking about it, playing with it. We would then convene you all in early October. I think we have October 6th as the first time you come together post workshop to say, okay, what do we think? And you're starting to think about maps at that point. And I'm going to make sure, because this is where it gets tricky about when you actually are posting maps versus thinking about maps. And I'm going to have to like lean hard on Susan and Ruby to keep me in the clear. But that would be when you're starting to actually talk about changing things. And then you'll notice there's a little asterisk by October 6th. That's when we're thinking you might need a meeting the following week. Like, because you've said, okay, here's some ideas. We want to do this. Staff, go forward, bring this stuff back. We're going to look at it. And the big trick of then scheduling a meeting the next week is we would need to get stuff done quickly enough to get it ready to put on the Board of Supervisors agenda for the 19th. That's the magic. We have to calendar magic. We have to see if it's actually possible.
And Jim, just to clarify, you're going to have formatted but unapportioned data by, I say August 30th. So you're going to have, the data that's formatted and complete, except for the couple of 50, 100, 200 people that are Santa Cruz County residents that are currently incarcerated. So you'll have a jump on it.
Good.
And then
that was my main concern. So thank you.
absolutely, I totally get that.
So I'm curious, it sounds like we haven't heard from Chris or Sherry in terms of A or B. Sorry, Commissioner Radin, don't mean to jump into your facilitation role.
No, I actually appreciate the help. Thank you.
From my perspective, I don't have a strong point of view either way, and I'm comfortable with the will of the group, so I'm good.
I tend to go with A. I think the 3 is good.
So shall we entertain a motion to follow option A?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Mosier. And is there a second, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill.
Do we have?
Okay. And for the record, there are no members from the public wishing to speak to this item. Now for the roll call vote, Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Radin,
Yes.
Mosher,
Yes.
Reyes.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0 with Chair Watkins excused.
Very good. Now, where should we go next? I want to look to the staff for direction on this. There are a number of dates that are associated with option A. I don't have them in front of me at the moment. They were on the shared screen earlier. Are we in a position to try to fix those dates now, or do we have some flexibility to come back at our next meeting? And to do that without inconveniencing.
I guess I would like to speak to that a little bit. I mean, I think the biggest thing that would be helpful for us is whether it's the specific day, is that the idea of, doing those weeks, like doing one a week, good. And is it just specifying what day? Because one of the things that'll be helpful for us is having a little bit of flexibility on the day of the week, depending on location. because I think that's going to be really the sticking point about scheduling is your availability and if we're doing hybrid and availability of a location. So, and maybe so I guess I would just suggest that if you're all like, yes, those weeks are fine, it's we really do appreciate the flexibility of sort of that matchmaking between when you all are available and where we think is the right community location to support that level of engagement we're seeking.
Okay.
And I will also add that we purposefully skipped the second week of September because you may have heard that there's a governor's recall election happening, and we anticipate a lot of our staff will be helping with that, helping our county clerk run that election on the 14th of September. So that kind of threw a wrinkle into our calendaring, which is why there's none scheduled there.
So could you recap the 3 weeks? Because again, it was up on the shared screen, but we don't have that in front of us at the moment.
Share that screen again real quick.
So essentially, we were talking about the second, third, and fourth, fourth and fifth week, I guess, second, fourth, and fifth week.
Yes, okay. Mm-hmm. Any comments from the commissioners on those 3 weeks?
Are those evening or daytime? Must be evening, right?
That we have some flexibility about that. My experience is generally if you're seeking community engagement, you do it in the evening. But I mean, that's part of the decision making. From a staffing perspective, we're comfortable with whatever you all think makes the most sense. But I mean, my working assumption was we would be doing it in the evening.
Okay.
We could certainly bring these back for your final decision at the next meeting. If there's some sense that, yes, this looks like it might work, but let's not choose these exact dates today. I think it would still work if you wanted to get at that point we'll have more information about locations that have the audio visual capability that we're going to be required to have. So,
and actually that does make sense, because let's suppose we give the flexibility and then we find out that a particular location that's desirable is available on the 22nd of September, but not on the 23rd, then the staff is given the flexibility to work that out. And if we were to set firm dates today, we might be taking that off the table. So I would tend to say we should, give this staff encouragement on the 3 weeks, but give the staff some flexibility to match up locations and specific dates and times. Is that fair?
I support that. That's a good point. I really think we should give the staff the flexibility to to figure out what are the best dates from the standpoint of getting public participation, and also not overwork the staff.
And then also, I would say that the staff would have some leeway to decide, which of those dates or which of those weeks is committed to the north location and the other two as well, so that it gives, again, just more optionality.
I guess I would want to ask one really specific question, which is, right now we're saying do 3 different meetings and each in their own week. From a staff perspective, if we did 2 in 1 week, we're okay with that. It's really up to you guys. So I mean, I just want to raise that question. If you're like, no, let's not do them the week of the 6th, Memorial or whatever, Labor Day week, that's a crazy week for people, and let's do them 2 the week of the 20th and the 3rd the week of the 27th, we will accommodate whatever makes sense. I'm not suggesting that's the right answer, but I want to let you all know, if you think that makes more sense, gives us more time for outreach, but that also means 2 public meetings, in a week. So I just want to raise that for your consideration, and we are fine with whatever your preference is.
Okay.
That's a good point about the Labor Day week.
Mhm.
And it gives us a little more time if we don't have that one on the 9th.
I wonder if we should just, again, not even take a formal motion here, but essentially say to the staff, well, let's try to schedule the 3 meetings during the band of time between the 9th of September and the end of September, bearing in mind that we'll look for 3 locations in each of the areas, north, mid, and south, and just see what they can come back with as sort of the best result after looking at the matrix that they've got.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I do too. My calendar is pretty open as long as we make this decision at the next meeting. It should be fine in terms of my calendar.
Okay.
Well, as staff, we appreciate the flexibility, and the other thing is we will do our best to come up with some locations, but also Jim and Chris, if you guys think about sort of North County, if there's obviously we can use Chambers here, as a spot, but if there's a more of a community focused thing, let us know. If you think about things, Sherry, Peter, mid-county perspective, let us know.
Mhm.
Just so we want to be open to if we're missing something. The other thing that we work really collaboratively with our city partners. So we frequently use City of Watsonville Chambers for stuff, so that they're very accommodating whenever possible for us using their site, because they have the audiovisual stuff that we need to be able to use to do this work. But we would welcome any emails from any of you around. Here's some location ideas, and we'll let Commissioner Watkins know that too.
Okay.
Great.
And when we do have these emails, to whom should we direct them?
I would send them to Rita as our project manager, and she'll
Okay.
then make sure we get, as a staff, we can incorporate them into our work teams.
Great. So are there any other factors that we should consider in the context of setting up our workshops? I think we've done a good job of covering location, timing and date, and just the format in general of having the 3 versus the 5. Anything else?
I think the only thing I would say is this gives us a lot of the parameters we need to do the planning. And I think our intention would be, we will start to bring a more focused workshop design to you in August. And
Okay.
we'll continue to sort of refine that as we get closer. But that would be our goal. So we're actually talking about, well, what's it going to be like? What are we going to be? How are we going to engage the public? What will the commissioners be saying? That kind of stuff. We'll have a better sense of that a little bit more time. Rita or Susan, do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, you've captured it, Elisa.
Okay, so then shall we move to item 5 on the agenda? Are there any reports or announcements from commissioners? So I don't hear any. So I believe we can move then to inquire about whether there's written correspondence that should be shared at this point.
Commission has received no written correspondence.
Okay. So with that, I think we've exhausted the agenda and the business to be accomplished during today's meeting. So shall we adjourn? And does that require a motion? Or it does not? Okay. Well, very good. I thank you all and look forward to continuing to work with you on all this.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody,
Thanks, everybody.
good job, Mr. Vice
Thank
Chair.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's kind of a dress rehearsal and maybe I'll never have a chance to do it again, but thanks for your support.
You did wonderfully.
You did great. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
All right.